Hello everyone, it's Becky here and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to a new video. I am so excited, you cannot imagine, because today is February 1st and you know what that means? That means that the Three Musketeers read-along is officially starting today and I'm super excited, I'm super buzzing. I thought that I would try to document this little journey of me hosting a read-along for the first time, and also because it's Three Musketeers and I always wanted to create some sort of special video dedicated to this book, but I thought that doing just a sit-down video where I would be talking about the book would be kind of boring, so I thought that I will try and create some vlog. I don't know how this will go because I don't do this very often, so I'll see. But if this will get published, that will be one of the very big successes I will consider done for this year already. So we'll see. But what I would like to do is to give you little reports on my reading regularly, as we will go chapter by chapter and we'll see where it's gonna take us. And we are starting today officially on the Voxer, where there is already about 12 people, I think, sorry, 12 people. And then also I'm reading this with lovely V from the Sassy Library Fox over at Instagram, so I'm super excited. And as many of you know already, I really wanted to reread Three Musketeers for quite a while, because I read this several years ago and I always really loved this book, especially when I was reading it in my teenage years. And I was really curious to see if this book will basically live up to the expectations, and also because this would be my first time reading it in English. So I'm very curious and very excited, and I really hope that I will still like it, and also the people in a group will like it, because I feel a little bit pressured by the fact that I was praising the book over on booktube for the 2 years and everyone is always like, oh, it's her most favorite book of all time, so I'm really hoping that they will enjoy it as well. So yeah, without the further ado, I will start. I'm gonna read the first 2 chapters and then I will let you know how did it go. Hello again after first 4 chapters. I am so happy, guys. The minute I started to read the book, it felt so nice and so cozy and so like comforting. I cannot even describe this, because the first time I read this book was when I was reading the edition my dad gifted to me, and those books belonged to him. It was from like 60s or something, and I still have those books until this day. And when I was reading it now, although it's in English, it really brought back the memories when I was reading it in our garden for the first time, and it was just so lovely. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I was a little bit worried whether the book will live up to my expectations or what I remembered from my first reads, but oh my goodness, immediately by the first chapter I was like, I just want to finish this book in 2 days, and I did not want to put the book down, because right from the chapter 1 there is so much happening. We get introduced the main character, and also by chapter 4, which is the one I just finished, we basically meet the Three Musketeers. I'm gonna try not to give you any spoilers here, but all the main characters are introduced already, and also quite a lot of side characters. But the great thing is that this is not confusing at all, because sometimes I do have troubles to keep up with characters if there is too many of them introduced in the books quite quickly or early on. For example, the Priory of the Orange Tree really kicked my butt with this, and I was not able to recognize who is who even by the end of the book. But here, although there is so much happening right at the very beginning and there are so many characters, it's not confusing at all, maybe for the fact that I read it previously, but you know what I mean. And it was just so lovely to read this all over again. And the great thing is that my sister gave me for my birthday these stickers, and I didn't even know that something like this exists. Actually, I hope it's in focus, but those are kind of like a see-through sticky notes which you can write on and you can stick it into your book. So what I do now is that when I finish every single chapter, after every single chapter, I just put little sticky note there, and I write there a little bit of the content of the chapter and also what happened and what I liked or didn't like about it, but mostly what I liked because I love it, and then started to annotate a little bit here with my colorful sticky notes. So I'm super excited, and also people in the group seem to enjoy it so far so much as well, so that makes me so happy. And currently I'm reading this edition of Three Musketeers, which is Colin's Classic. Someone started to hover at the hall, but I don't know if you can hear it, so sorry about that. If yes, I'm not a huge fan of this cover, I must confess. I don't know what is it, I never liked it, but I got this. Okay, they are hovering, give me a second. Alright, we are back. So what I was saying is that I got this book when I was still in a primary school, so several years ago, in one kind of cheaper bookshop. So I got it for I think like 360 or something euros back then. Well, still back then, but in Slovakia we have euros. But I really wanted to own this in English, and what was absolutely fascinating to me was that when I started to read this now, I never really finished the book originally when I bought it, because I think the level of English here for me was just way too much when I was still in a primary school. So when I was reading this and I went through the very first chapter, there were so many words which I wrote the translation of in Slovak, and it was so lovely because now obviously I could understand everything I was reading. So that was very nice. And also what I love about this book is that, okay, you know what, maybe now is the time to actually tell you what the Three Musketeers are all about and what's the book about and what's happening in the story. So I think that many of you know this story from movie adaptation because there is over 50 movie adaptations of them, and the new one is coming, I think, at the beginning of the springtime, and that's also the reason why we are reading this now, so everyone can be ready for the new film adaptation, and I really hope it's gonna be a good one. But anyway, so I think you know it already, but basically the story is about our main character called D'Artagnan, who has this desire since very young age to become one of the king's musketeers, and so he leaves his village where he was born and he goes to Paris to become one of the musketeers. And obviously, as many of you know, he meets three other musketeers called Athos, Porthos and Aramis, and this is a story of friendship, and there is a lot of drama and intrigues and love story happening, and it's just absolutely wonderful story. And I'm not gonna give away any more than this because I think everyone should read this, but what I love about this, or about the writing of Alexandra Dumas in general and historical fiction, is just the style of writing and the way how the sentences are constructed. And already here I underlined so many different sentences which I love simply for the way how they were written, because I know that if I would be reading this in a contemporary fiction, I feel like the writing would be so much simpler, but here the sentences are so rich and they are so beautifully describing the feelings or even memories of some person, and I love it absolutely. Hello my friends, so updates approximately in 1/3 of the book. It's difficult for me to speak about this book when I was thinking what I'm gonna tell you, because it's not officially wrap up yet, so I cannot really give you the overall review of the book, but in the same time, because I'm trying not to give you any spoilers, what I'm actually gonna say. But anyway, so for now, 1/3 of the book done. I do enjoy it very much, but one thing that kind of strikes me from when I was reading it for the first time, or when I was actually younger, is how now I'm realizing how over the top some things are. And Gemma from Gem of Books, who is also reading this with us during the read-along, she mentioned that to her it really seems almost like a satiric style of writing, and I must agree. And I think this is interesting because I don't even remember, or I don't know if I did not notice this before when I was a kid, or I just did not really realize that this is a thing. But now reading about stuff such as romance and love and some characters being in love, the way they are expressing their feelings is just so over the top, and trust me, I am very much a sentimental, romantic, silly soul, so I do appreciate this on one hand. However, just the way it's written, and I don't know if my younger self thought that that's how people express their feelings, or I don't know, but now I found it slightly weird. And also some other things regarding expressing your feelings are just really kind of like over the top and exaggerating, but for some reason it still to me feels like it's a part of the book and it's how the book is written, and somehow it just belongs there and it's okay. So I'm super excited to read this. So far in this part it was very much, I would say like male driven, and all the characters we met are mostly just men, but slowly we are getting to know the female characters as well, because female characters, for now there was only Madame Bonancieux, I will never know how to pronounce these names, but there was the only female character who got more space. And now there was also introduced the character of the Queen Anne of Austria, and she was sort of like involved in this one I wanted to say accident and incident in one word, so in this one event which happened, and obviously the Three Musketeers helped to, you know, save a day with her, and she was very sassy towards the Cardinal at some point, which is another character, and I really liked that. But now I know from reading it before that now there's gonna be some other female characters coming into the game, and they are gonna, how do you say in English, mix the cards? That's probably not the correct word to say, but yeah, I'm still very much excited, and I will give you my update soon, so I'm gonna keep reading. Bye bye! And this is where I lost the rest of my footage, my friends. I am so sorry, but hello, welcome again from Slovakia. Now, if you watch my latest video, which I posted last Saturday, you know how and why I found myself now in Slovakia again. And I guess what happened as I was moving myself and also trying to put the things in a place. I also deleted my memory cards from the camera, thinking that I have the rest of this vlog footage in my laptop already. Well, I didn't, and somehow I deleted it, and I just cannot find the rest of the footage which I recorded for the rest of the readers, unfortunately. So I am going to be telling you about the read along and also wrapping up the whole book right now here, because I don't have that footage. Apologies. So basically, one thing I would like to set as a first thing is to say a massive thank you and massive shout out to all the people who participated in this read along, every single booktuber and every single subscriber who decided to participate over at Voxer or Instagram, because this was honestly one of the best reading experiences I had in my life, because I was reading the best book ever, my favorite book, with such a lovely community of people. And the fact that people, I know we all read books, that's what this community is about, but Three Musketeers is a really chunky book, and I know so many people read it also because they knew how much it means to me, so I really appreciate this. And the fact that we managed to, you know, keep this basically running from the February 1st until the first week of March, which is entire month, over a month, and we managed to send text messages and voice messages over at Voxer. That was absolutely a wonderful experience to me too. So thank you very much to everyone. Right, my friends, and now to the book. What I would like to do is to basically give you, as I mentioned, some wrap up about the book, and also explain to you once again, if I haven't done it already on this channel, why I love this book so much. And I would love to make you want to read the book if you haven't done it yet after watching this video. And then also I would like to share with you my opinion about the newest adaptation of Three Musketeers, which I will try to be very gentle with my words because I am not happy with the adaptation. So anyway, the first things first, speaking about the book. Why I love this book so much? Well, first of all, I love all the work by Alexandre Dumas. I haven't read all the books by him yet, but I read quite a lot of them, and I loved every single one of them, and Three Musketeers the most. And the reason for this is mostly the story or the plot, and then characters, and also the writing style. So when it comes to the story, I mentioned very briefly what this is about, but mostly, basically from the page one, as you start reading the book, there is so much action happening, and you are never bored. From the moment D'Artagnan leaves his village and he is gifted the presents by his father and mother and leaves to Paris and meets one by one all the Musketeers and Messieurs de Treville, and starts getting involved in all the drama and intrigues and romance and love story, and then solving all these kind of like mysteries and going on all of these adventures. From literally page one, there is so much happening, no one is getting bored. I must confess, there was maybe one part when I was a little bit bored, because I will be speaking about characters later on, but there was this one part, if you read the book you know what I'm talking about, because Aramis, who is one of my favorite musketeers, I love all of them basically, but I really like him because he is very much torn between being a future priest and being a musketeer, and have this internal fight within himself. And there is one part of the book where he is kind of closed in the inn with some other fellow holy men or thinkers, and they are discussing different dogmas and religion, and this part for me was a little bit boring because it went on for several pages, and I think we agreed with a couple of other readers that this part was maybe a little bit too long, unnecessarily long, but I must say that that's the only part when I felt a little bit bored with the book. Other than that, there is so much drama, so much action. I also love the themes this book is talking about, mostly friendship and loyalty. I really love how Alexandre Dumas managed to stress the importance of community and of friendship, and what does it mean to be, you know, an honorable man. And once you gave your word, that's what really, you know, that was everything. Like, you gave someone your word and everyone knew they can rely on you, and the other way around. And I feel that this is something which in today's society doesn't really, it's more rare than it would be a usual thing. And I just really love this, how this all important characteristics of people are really sort of like lifted to another level, you know, being loyal, being honorable, being friend to someone, being willing to die for someone, you know. And I really love this. One of the things which I'm gonna say honestly is not my favorite in this book, but it's not only the case of this book, but it's basically in every single book I read when this was the case, is that when you have some romances in stories, whether it's books or movies, and one of the love interests is already married, for me it's like, because I would very much love to cheer for the couple, but once the person is married, I am not a huge fan of this whole concept. However, in this case, it was maybe an exception because obviously we know, this is not a spoiler, but the character of Madame Bonancieux, she is a married woman, but there is quite a lot of differences between these two individuals within the couple because her husband is much older and they are really not compatible in many ways and for different reasons, and that's not something I'm gonna spoil for you, but this is maybe one thing which I wasn't hugely happy about because I'm like, okay, but she's already married, but you know what I mean. Which also leads me to characters now, and characters are something which I love very much, and I would say this is another thing which I love about Alexandra Dumas, because usually when you read some books they are very often either character driven or plot driven, but I feel like this book has everything because this book has such an interesting plots and themes and so much drama and you know, romances, that even if the characters wouldn't be the greatest, I feel like the story would manage to carry the story. However, the characters are absolutely brilliant, so they only lift up the whole story. I am praising this book here like a lunatic, but you must forgive me because you know how much I love it. So when it comes to characters, obviously there are so many of them and I love all of them for so many different reasons. First of all being that they are very complex, same as the story, which is also one thing I wanted to say about the story but I forgot. But it also kind of belongs to writing style anyway. Basically what I want to say is that usually when you have a few main storylines which are following around the story, you also suddenly realize that there is so many other smaller things happening, and sometimes suddenly they start to prevail and you start to wonder whether we will actually get back to the original story. But suddenly you also realize that after all this time and all these chapters, when we were kind of discovering the new characters or new plots or new storylines, we nicely got back to where we started, to the starting point, and like every single thread will nicely, you know, create this compelling story, and I love this. And that's same with the characters. Like the characters are very compelling, we know their backstory, we slowly learn why they're acting the way they do, and we also have good characters, we also have villains here. And what I love about this is that they are not villain just for the sake of having a villain character in the story, but as we get to know them, we discover what happened to them in the past and why basically they turn out to be the way they are. And when it comes to characters concretely, obviously we have our 4 musketeers, which are absolutely brilliant, and they are all having their specific characteristic. So Athos, Porthos, Aramis, the 3 main musketeers, and then D'Artagnan. And obviously there is Monsieur de Treville, who is the captain of musketeers and the whole father figure for them, and I love him very much because he's this strong, gentle character who always takes care of his musketeers. And then there is a cardinal, who he and King are kind of having this little war between themselves, and obviously there is happening a massive sort of like a historical political intrigues background. So even if you're a fan of historical fiction, you will definitely find there something, because so many characters are inspired by real life. And obviously I would not go as far as to say how much of the events are true from the history, because I don't really know this knowledge, but definitely people who like history, they can find something in the story as well. So there is the character, as I said, of Cardinal, and the King, who is acting really like a small child. And we also have quite a lot of female characters in this story, and this is also what I really appreciate about Alexandra Dumas, because bearing in mind the time when this was written, obviously it's not perfect, and sometimes my feminist heart is a little bit like but in the same time I still feel like in the time this was written, the female characters had quite a lot of voice, and they were very strong and independent in many ways, and they were characters who are very, you know, gentle and loving and kind of like sensitive. However, they were also very strong, and especially the character of Milady de Winter, who is sort of like in a way she is my favorite character, but she is really evil. But again, we know why things are happening and why she is doing what she is doing. So I really appreciate this about the characters and the way they are developed, and no one is villain just for the sake of having a villain in a story, which is something which always bothers me when this happens in a book, when author makes someone to be a bad guy just for the sake of having a bad guy without any reasoning or backstory. Okay, my friends, and this slowly leads me to talking about the movie, and Okay, one thing I would like to make clear is that this is really just my opinion, and if I am criticizing this movie maybe a little bit too much, just please don't take it as this is the worst movie ever. It might be that you will enjoy it, because as I always say, if I'm criticizing something like some book or story, the fact that I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean that you won't enjoy it, so please still go to cinema, see it for yourself. If you do, let me know in the comments what you thought of it, and even prove me wrong. Maybe the movie is great, but my biggest problem with this movie is that it wasn't really an adaptation as I was expecting or as I was hoping it to be, because after almost 50 adaptations they are done, I just cannot understand why is it not possible to make a movie adaptation which really would be true to the book. The Musketeers are one of the best stories ever, and yet people still fail when it comes to adapting the story and like catching the essence of like the events and characters, and especially, oh my goodness, characters. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit So first of all, when it comes to story, I'm gonna go story, characters and the movie styles, and as I did the writing style with the book. When it comes to the story is not exactly as it was in the book, and see, I understand. I know that when you're adapting a book to the movie, and especially a book which has over 800 pages, it's very difficult to fit it into 120 pages. I understand this, and I know you have to do sacrifices, and I know that you need to sometimes combine the scenes, and you need to leave something out from the book, and you need to change things and maybe put something together as it wasn't in the book. I understand all of this, but that's not what happened in this case. Like, just the story was very different. If you read the book, you know there was one of the main parts of one of the main adventures from the story in the book was getting the Queen's diamond stats, and I'm not gonna be talking overly too much about this because I don't want to spoil anything. So getting the diamond stats. Well, in this film adaptation, this was kind of like just side storyline, just something very small. The biggest one was to set Athos free from the prison, and we know that even in the book he was in the prison. However, that was for a very different reason as it was in the book, which leads me to characters, because this is all like combined. So I'm gonna be talking, hopefully it's gonna make sense to you. If not, I apologize, but I just need to get this out of my system. So when it comes to the characters, first of all, in the movie adaptation, all the characters, maybe except D'Artagnan, but all the characters were at least like 20 years older than what they were in the book. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind this when you have like older actors, because obviously the cast was very good when it comes to French actors. For example, Vincent Cassel played Athos, and I really appreciate this. However, there is a certain reason why I think characters should have the certain age. So for example, when in the book there is a character who is 19 years old or like 20 years old, I believe that if you have situation in the movie and you would have a man who is 20 years old and the man who is 40 years old, they would solve the situation quite differently. And this is my biggest issue with this whole thing. The fact that the characters in the film are so much older, they also gave very different vibe, and they gave me very different characteristics of their own character, if that makes sense. So for example, D'Artagnan, he was still very young in the movie. I don't really remember what age he was in the movie, or if they explained how old he was. However, in the book he was like 19, less than 20 years old. So it's a very young age when you also act accordingly to your age, and you are this very crazy person, light-headed person, and you fall in love so easily with everyone, you have crushes on everyone, and you have this, you know, hot head, and you want to do everything immediately. And I felt like even in the character of D'Artagnan in the movie, this failed a little bit. And yes, there were some scenes when he acted a little bit crazy, like you know, like young man, but for me it wasn't enough, and it rather felt awkward than it felt, you know, good as in the book. And then with other musketeers, even Aramis, who I mentioned, I really enjoyed his characteristics and the fact how torn he is between being a musketeer and being an honorable man. Here in the movie was a particular scene in which he was supposed to torture a man in order to get information, and the way he did this was that he took a crucifix from the wall and he sharpened the top of it to make it look like spear, or how is it called, and he wanted to use this as a torturing while also kissing it with kind of like evil smile, and literally like mocking this fact of him being involved with like God and everything. It really like, I didn't like this, and it really made me despite the Aramis character in the movie. Like, I really didn't like him. So my main issue, as I said, was the characters, and especially even the Three Musketeers. I just didn't really like them because the way they were portrayed by those actors, and I'm not saying that the acting itself was bad, I just didn't like the way they portrayed the characteristic or like the souls of the characters, because it just didn't really fit with me with them. And then it was the same with the character of Monsieur de Treville, who I loved in the book because, as I said, absolutely wonderful father figure. Here in the movie he really just came across to me as this grumpy, annoyed man who is constantly grumpy, honestly. And then the biggest issue I had is that with the plot as well. So we know that Athos basically was in a prison in the book as well for a short period of time, and we know why. Here they made it a completely different plot. They constructed around Athos being in a prison, and the main task for our Three Musketeers, in this case it was Aramis, Porthos and D'Artagnan, they were supposed to set the Athos free. So the main mission was to figure out who basically set the trap for Athos and what happened there and why this all happened. And this was kind of the main mission, and then the diamond stats came afterwards, and it wasn't even like the biggest, like the biggest task, I would say, which is a shame because I think it's really beautiful, including, you know, the whole Buckingham situation and stuff. Again, no spoilers for anyone who haven't read the book or haven't seen the story, so you can do both. So yeah, this was like my main issues with the adaptation, that the characters were acting very differently from the book, and I don't like it because the characters are something I really love about the book, as you know already. And then the fact that the story got changed in many ways and not really according how the book was written. But I'm trying to kind of take a step back and try to appreciate the movie as if I haven't read the Three Musketeers, but obviously it's very difficult. But if I try to look at it from this point of view, I still do have some issues with the movie. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I like about this movie, so I don't really sound like a horrible person. What I like about the movie are, let's say, the settings and props and costumes and the whole mise-en-scène, how the movie was done. And I also think when it comes to dressing, that, for example, men in today's time could take a lot of inspiration how to dress, let's say. Yes, still like the costumes and the whole mise-en-scène, props, setting. Music was very lovely as well. I would say that even when it comes to like cinematography and the lighting, that was very nicely done. There were quite a lot of like candlelight, let's say, which I really appreciated. And some of the shots, I am usually quite a big fan of handheld camera, but in this case it wasn't really my favorite, because even when the fight scene, I just felt that they are very confusing, and a lot of fight scenes happened when it was dark, let's say, and even I had an issue to kind of make clear for myself who are the characters fighting and who is still alive and who is not, and if this is a villain and if this is a good guy, and it got a little bit confusing, and especially like the fight scenes. But I think it's definitely action-packed movie, and I think that for people who have no idea about the original book and about the original story and how things happen in the story and how the characters were, I think they can still find a lot of enjoyment in this film itself. I didn't even in the dialogues, when I'm honest, because one of the things which we discuss in the book, as I said, that the book is very kind of on the edge of being very serious and discussing very serious topics, however still being almost satirical, and there is a lot of like comical situations. And what I like about different movie adaptations is that maybe it wasn't completely according to the book when it comes to story, but they always managed to catch the essence of the humor the book was carrying. But in this movie concretely, I just did not really find the humor funny, and I found it rather awkward than funny. Another thing about the characters, let's say Madame Bonacieux, she wasn't married at all. This wasn't an issue. So I'm like, yeah, so I'm so sorry if this is super confusing, but yeah, please go and see the movie and let me know what you think, because I would love to have discussion, especially you, my lovely fellow booktubers and subscribers who read this with me. Let me know, because I'm dying to talk about this with someone, because none of my friends saw it, and even if they would, it doesn't matter, because no one really bothered to read the book, and it's the biggest mistake, of course. But I have no one to talk about this with, so please go and see this and let me know in the comments, or write me DM on the Instagram, and just please let's talk about this, because yeah, I have a lot of this in my chest and I need to get it out somehow. So yeah, one thing I really appreciate, I must say, is also how this movie managed to be up to date in certain things. So for example, the diversity when it comes to cast and actors, even Madame Bonancier or some other people or some different things which are like topic which are common in today's society, and they managed to be involved there. And I understand that in the past, let's say in the book, those topics were completely taboo or people did not discuss them, and here they were brought up. So I appreciate this. So to conclude it, yes, I appreciate the mise-en-scène, I appreciate the music and sound effects, and I appreciate how up to date with certain themes this movie was, and I really enjoyed. And there was a lot of action. I would say you are not bored during this movie, but you just cannot expect having really an adaptation according to the book and according to the story, because then you would be really disappointed, as I was. Maybe you won't, but I really was disappointed. There is also another part coming out later in the year, because this one was supposed to be dedicated to D'Artagnan, and basically the ending is also is like the open ending. I'm not gonna tell you anything, but it's supposed to leave the cliffhanger at the end, and I'm like, no, you know what, I know what's gonna happen and I don't really feel the urge to go and see the second part of this mini-series, or how you can call it. So yes, anyway, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you do read Three Musketeers. Please do yourself a favor, make me happy, read the book, let me know in the comments. And if you go and see this movie, please let me know, absolutely, because I'm dying to know and discuss this with someone. So for now, I will wish you the lovely rest of the week. I hope you had a lovely Easter holiday and you had some time to rest, and I will do my best to catch up with you in the next videos. I don't know when it's gonna be, but I really wanted to get this out of my chest immediately as I saw the movie. So this is me saying hi to you, and hopefully I will see you with another video very soon. Take care, bye bye.